Good afternoon. This is Judge Alyssa Perez resuming the criminal docket for the 210th District Court for February 15, 2022. All matters being heard again are being heard in accordance with all emergency orders and directives regarding the COVID-19 protocol. I'll go ahead and call our next two cases, calling cause numbers 2021-0D01637 and 2021-0D01152, State of Texas versus Everest Herrera. May I have announcements, please?
Roa King for the State of Texas.
Luis Yanez on behalf of Mr. Herrera, we're ready, Judge.
And Mr. Yanez, you see your client, Mr. Herrera, appearing from the police center?
I do, Judge.
Okay, Mr. Herrera, we're going to be asking you some questions, so I need to swear you in. If you would please raise your right hand. Sir, do you swear or affirm that any testimony you provide will be the truth and the whole truth?
Yes.
Thank you very much. You can put your hand down. Sir, would you state your name for the record?
Jared Herrera.
Mr. Herrera, as I mentioned, we are set for a plea today, and there are documents that you may have reviewed with your attorney. I'm going to ask you some questions. The first of which are the plea papers for each of these cases. They're marked as State's Exhibit Number 1. Within that document, you're guaranteed certain rights, including the right to remain silent, the right to trial by jury, the right to counsel, the right to confront and cross-examine witnesses, and the right to call witnesses on your behalf and in your defense. Mr. Herrera, do you recall reviewing the plea papers with your attorney and signing those documents?
Yes, that's correct.
Did you understand everything contained within the documents?
Yes.
Mr. Yanez, have you had more than 10 days to prepare defenses in each of these cases?
I have, Your Honor.
And did you explain the plea papers to your client?
I did.
You believe he has understood the admonishments, rights, and consequences of giving up these rights by entering pleas today?
Yes, he has, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Herrera, are you satisfied with your attorney's representation of you?
Yes, ma'am.
And Mr. Yanez, do you have any reason to believe your client is not presently competent to enter his pleas?
None whatsoever, Your Honor.
Mr. Herrera, have you ever been found incompetent by any court?
See, no.
Okay, has a judge ever ruled that you were not mentally capable of handling your personal affairs, anything like that?
No, ma'am.
Okay, ever been examined by a doctor or psychiatrist who's found you mentally ill?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so based on your testimony, your attorney's representations, and my observations of you, I'm going to find that you are competent to enter your pleas today. Sir, are you a U.S. citizen?
Yes.
Where were you born?
El Paso, Texas.
Okay, so in cause number 2021-0D01637, the charge is unauthorized uses of a vehicle, which is a state jail felony. To that charge, what is your plea? Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
And in cause number 2021-0D01152, I understand there are 2 counts in the indictment, but you are only pleading to count 1, which is burglary of habitation, the second-degree felony. To that charge, what is your plea? Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Are you making each of your pleas freely and voluntarily?
Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry, ma'am.
Are you making each of your pleas freely and voluntarily?
Freely.
Okay, I will find you are making your pleas freely and voluntarily. Ms. King, would you summarize the evidence, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Were the state to proceed to trial on the indictment, the state would have proven each and every element of the offense charged: burglary of a habitation as count 1 and count 2, theft of firearm in cause number 2021-0D01152, and unauthorized use of vehicle in cause number 2021-0D01637 beyond a reasonable doubt. Judge, at this time, the defendant is pleading to a 2 years confinement, probating to 5 years of adult probation to run concurrent with count 1 in 2021-0D01152, and to dismiss count 2, which is the theft of firearm, and the other terms and conditions that is stated on the state's plea paperwork. And at this time, the state moves to admit Exhibit 1, the state's plea paperwork, Exhibit 2, Article 3914 disclosures, and Exhibit 3 as the indictment.
With respect to the exhibits, is there any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, states 1, 2, and 3 are admitted per case. And is that your understanding of the plea agreement, Mr. Yanez?
It is.
And Mr. Herrera, is that your understanding as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
I understand that the plea agreement is not binding on the court. However, if I were to reject it, I would allow you to withdraw your pleas. If I follow the plea agreement, you may not appeal these cases except on matters raised by written motion and ruled on before trial or by permission of the court. The next document I'm going to ask you about is the 1-page document entitled "The Trial Court Certification of Your Right to Appeal." It is a document that explains your appeal rights because these are plea bargained or negotiated cases. You do not have an automatic right of appeal. Mr. Herrera, do you recall reviewing the trial court certification with your attorney and signing on those documents?
Yes, ma'am.
They were signed by your attorney and signed by me as well. So on your pleas of guilty and the evidence introduced, I will accept your pleas and at this time find the evidence substantiates your guilt. In cause number 2021-0D01637, I will find you guilty of the offense of unauthorized use of a vehicle, and I will sentence you according to the plea agreement to 2 years confinement in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice State Jail Facility that will be suspended for a period of 5 years of community supervision. And in cause number 2021-0D01152, I'll find you guilty of count 1, burglary of habitation, and sentence you as well there to the plea agreement, according to the plea agreement, 2 years confinement in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice Institutional Division, suspend that also for a period of 5 years of community supervision. For each case, the fine will be $3,000, 300 hours of community service, subject to urine and breath analysis, curfew, tap, screen for tap, court costs, no offensive contact with any of the complainants. There will be a dismissal forthcoming on count 2. These sentences will run concurrent with one another. Is there anything further, Mr. Yanez or Ms. King?
Nothing further.
And nothing further from.
All righty. Thank you, Mr. Herrera. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Take a seat.
Thank you, Mr. Yanez.
It'll be right with the Crawford.
Crawford.
Make sure it's on. Turn it on. Camera, microphone right here, so just you'll be able to see yourself up there. Okay? This is Mr. Crawford.
Okay, let me just sign off on this dismissal. All right. You ready, Mr. Perez? If you'll unmute. Could
Yes, I am,
calling
ma'am.
cause, thank you. Calling cause number 2020-D05715, State of Texas versus Jared Allen Crawford. May I have announcements, please?
Roa King for the state of Texas.
Robert Pettis for Jared Crawford.
And Mr. Perez, do you see your client appearing from the police center?
Yes, I do.
Okay, Mr. Crawford, I'm going to be asking you some questions. So I need to swear you in. If you would please raise your right hand. Sir, do you swear or affirm that any testimony you provide will be the truth and the whole truth?
Yes.
Thank you very much. You can put your hand down. Sir, would you state your name for the record, please?
Jared Allen Crawford.
Mr. Crawford, we are scheduled for a plea in this case. I'll be asking you questions about documents you may have reviewed with your attorney, the first of which is marked as State's Exhibit number 1. Those are the plea papers in this case. Within that document, you're guaranteed certain rights, including the right to remain silent, the right to trial by jury, the right to counsel, the right to confront and cross-examine witnesses, and the right to call witnesses on your behalf and in your defense. Mr. Crawford, do you recall reviewing State's Exhibit number 1 with your attorney and signing that document?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you understand everything contained within that document?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Perez, did you have at least 10 days to prepare a defense in this case?
Yes, Your Honor, and I know that we're going to put something on the record with respect to a fine, that there's a $4,000 fine listed in the plea agreement, but that $4,000 is going to be probated.
That's correct, Judge.
All righty. So with respect to the plea papers, I'm sorry, you explained the plea papers. I guess we can review. I don't recall offhand what, I don't have the plea papers in front of me. I have a notation, but we'll look at the fine when we get there. Do you believe Mr. Crawford has understood the admonishments, rights, and consequences of giving up these rights by entering his plea today?
Yes, I do, Your Honor.
Mr. Crawford, are you satisfied with your attorney's representation of you?
Yes.
And Mr. Perez, do you have any reason to believe your client is not presently competent to enter a plea?
At this time, I do believe he is competent, Your Honor.
Mr. Crawford, have you ever been found incompetent by any court?
No.
Ever been examined by a doctor or psychiatrist who has ever found you mentally ill?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any condition diagnosed or maybe something that you're feeling that is not diagnosed that is preventing you from understanding what we're doing today?
No.
Have you been able to effectively communicate with your attorney throughout the entirety of your case?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so based on your testimony, your attorney's representations, and my observations of you, I'm going to find that you are competent to enter your plea. Sir, are you a U.S. citizen?
Yes, ma'am.
Where were you born?
I was actually born here in El Paso.
El Paso, Texas?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the charge against you is burglary of habitation. That is a second-degree felony. To that charge, what is your plea, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Are you making your plea freely and voluntarily?
Yes, ma'am. Freely and voluntarily.
I will find you are making your plea freely and voluntarily. Ms. King, would you summarize the evidence, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Were the state to proceed to trial on the indictment, the state would have proven each and every element, the offense charged, burglary of a habitation beyond a reasonable doubt. Judge, the defendant is pleading to a 5 years deferred adult probation with the remaining terms and conditions stated on the state's plea paperwork and probating the $4,000 fine. At this time, the state moves to admit Exhibit 1 is the state's plea paperwork, Exhibit 2, Article 3914 disclosure, and Exhibit 3 is the indictment.
Any objection to the exhibits?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, states exhibits 1, 2, and 3 will be admitted. Mr. Perez, is that your understanding of the plea agreement?
Yes, Your Honor.
And Mr. Crawford, is that your understanding of the plea agreement as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, understand that the plea agreement is not binding on the court. However, if I were to reject it, I would allow you to withdraw your plea. If I follow the plea agreement, you may not appeal this case except on matters raised by written motion and ruled on before trial or by permission of the court. The next document I'm going to ask you about is the one-page trial court certification of your right to appeal. It's a document that explains your appeal rights. Because this is a plea bargained or negotiated case, you do not have an automatic right of appeal. Mr. Crawford, do you recall reviewing the trial court certification with your attorney and signing that document?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, finally, I'm going to ask you about the motion for deferred adjudication. Mr. Crawford, did you review with your attorney and sign the motion for deferred adjudication?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Perez, have you explained to your client both the benefits and detriments of deferred adjudication?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Crawford, do you understand that if you violate a condition of deferred adjudication, the court can proceed to sentence you up to the full range of punishment for this offense? Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
And are you asking the court to grant you deferred adjudication?
Yes, Your Honor.
I will find there is sufficient evidence to substantiate a finding of guilt. However, I will not enter a finding of guilt at this time. Instead, I will defer further proceedings and place you on community supervision pursuant to the plea agreement for a period of 5 years. There will be a $4,000 fine. However, the entirety of that fine will be prorated, which means that you will not owe the fine unless you are not in compliance with probation. If at some point you're violating your probation, they can come back and ask to collect the entire fine, okay? You'll be screened for TAP, urine and breath analysis, curfew, court costs, screened for the MHI caseload, drug and alcohol counseling. You're to have no contact with the complainants. And there is also going to be a family violence finding in this case. Anything further, Mr. Perez or Ms. King?
Nothing further from the state, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Good luck to you, Mr. Crawford.
So you just take a seat up there again.
Thank you. So we just have one left for that for the afternoon. Is Mr. Munoz there?
Let me check, Judge.